Hey friends, welcome to the Random Thought Pod. I am your random thought leader, Livwat, and I'm here with the girl.
I'm the random thought follower.
Well, you're your co-host though, right? Like we made you co-host, so you're like random thought co-leader, I guess.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be like a second in command.
You're always trying to put yourself like a step below here.
Just
You
a
got
little
that
bit. I don't want to be
conditioning.
responsible for anything.
Yeah, actually, okay, so this is kind of funny. First of all, I know like last episode, I think it was toward the end where you were like, oh yeah, I've subscribed now. And you're like, I thought I was the only person on the podcast.
Really
And
true.
when I was editing it, I was like feeling so bad because I'm
I
like,
don't care.
I thought I explained this, but like the idea was to like combine the Wax Museum and ADD
Right.
Masterminds. So basically every second episode is like ADD Masterminds.
Okay.
Although we're going to have back-to-back. So everyone that you're on is ADD Mastermind style, and then the rest are like interviews.
Okay.
So that's what happens.
Absolutely fine with me.
But I did have an interaction with a guy on X, Elon Sex.
Oh my gosh.
Where they were talking about like Christian-run societies, and I was being all cynical about it and stuff.
Sure.
And this guy replied to me and said, "You call yourself a thought leader?" And I just thought that was funny. I'm like, he did not see the tongue in cheek in my random thought leader. I'm like, yes, that's a very prideful thing to call myself.
That's fantastic. I love that he used it as a holding you to a higher standard. But if the conversation had been differently, you know, it would have been like, who are you to say that you're a thought? What thoughts are you even? You can't even lead your own thoughts. You know, there'd be something else.
It could be like, I don't think these thoughts are entirely random, sir. I am disappointed in you.
These.
All right, so you had this like thing that you shared that was not on the podcast. But you wanted to share. And so I want to do it again, but this time it's recorded, where you talk about dark humor and toddlers.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I didn't share that last time.
Didn't share it on the podcast. You shared it outside of the podcast.
I must have been. I was trying out material after the pod.
It killed.
my guest of one. Yeah. So I work part-time at a daycare. I love my babies. I keep them safe. I'm good at this. I swear. But they give me just these opportunities to be really dark, and they don't get it. You know, my mom passed away a couple of years ago, and I don't want to say I'm like cool with it, but I'm balanced about it. But kids they have no concept of like really like loss, or that I don't have a mom on this planet right now. Right. So there's a lot of like, they pick up the TV remote or a fake phone and they'll like beep, beep, beep. And then, you know, who's calling? It's your mom. She's, you know, go talk to your mom. And I'm like, oh, lady, you've got some explaining. Where are you? You know, and they think it's hysterical, and they get a little confused. They don't get, where are you? Okay. It's been a while. All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, you know, and be home when I get back and stuff like that. And my coworkers really think I'm nuts. Like, they're really, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, this is fine. This is how I cope. It's absolutely cool. But yeah, one of them was, you know, my mom's at work, my dad's at work. This one said, where's your dad? And I was like, he's at his house. And she couldn't figure out that I, as a grown-up, didn't live with him. But that's another story. But she, where's your mom? And it's like, she's in the living room with my dad. Oh, okay. I mean, she's on the mantle, but she's there. But they have no concept of it. I think it is so funny just to take that option and be a little bit dark.
Well, I think it's interesting too, like the dark humor, and when it's something that's like personal to you, like it creates like an awkwardness for a lot of people, because they're like, I don't know if I should laugh, right?
Yeah.
But I think like, and I think I said this before, and it sounded like a podcast thing to say. So we'll do it on this podcast. Let's for reals. It's like I remember learning about like when you have trauma, and if you process it, if you're talking to someone like who intimately knows your trauma, you're always going to kind of process it very deeply and talk about it very deeply. But if you go to a person at the bus stop and you start talking to them about your trauma, you're going to talk about it in a surfacey kind of way. And when you talk about it in a surfacey kind of way, it actually helps like lighten it a bit. Yeah. And that's really good for processing. So I wonder if dark humor is another way of like kind of lightening it and making it a little bit more tolerable.
I think so. And the more I think about it, you know, the times that I'm really in it with friends of mine feel physically different than times that it's something surfacey like that. Or I had turned to somebody I know and I've been like, oh, it's not this year, but I was like, oh, it's the first snowfall. My mom would have loved this. And like a stranger was like, would have, are you okay? Is your mom, what happened? And I was like, you don't know me at all. But I was like, no, it's fine. No problem. Like, thank you. You know, she just loves snow. But like these little light things physically, it's an acknowledgement without letting it hurt, you know, which is good. Slight, still with the dark humor and still at work. I was running an errand because we ran out of gloves. You need gloves, you're cleaning, whatever. Ran on an errand and they said, oh, can you pick up a birthday card for a mom? Not a Mother's Day card for one of the boss's moms. Like, just can you run and grab one? Nothing too sentimental, nothing too stupid. Just go grab a card while you're out. I came back and I was like, here you go, guys. It's the one I would have picked for my mom if she was still here. And to me, it is hilarious. To them, it was the darkest, worst deed they have ever asked someone to do. And they were like, we'll never ask you again. I'm so sorry. I was like, it really didn't bother me at all. Like, I don't know how to, I have to shut up. I make people too uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I just,
I'm okay with it. Like, I'm just like, this is your way of dealing with it. So,
I mean, yeah. If I'm not crying, it's fine.
It's like I have friends too that like I've stopped being friends with. Right. And I was thinking about like, oh, I really so-and-so, you know, it's like, that's what so-and-so would have said. May he rest in peace. I'm like, I'm just hoping he's like,
wherever he is, he's peaceful.
But, like, yeah, like he can rest peacefully when he goes to bed. Like, I don't know.
I like that.
I'm not sure why I say that. It's just fun.
I might use it.
Oh, there was this show like Super Fun Night with Rebel Wilson. It was like a TV show. Yeah. And she's like in an elevator and she meets there's this guy and he's like, oh, how's so-and-so? And the guy's like, he's dead to me. And it's like, oh, you guys had a falling out? And it's like, no, they died. So that was great.
To everybody. Oh my gosh. I was at a wedding where a former very close friend and I put ourselves on opposite sides of the room and, you know, like did like a little elevator smile of like, yes, we used to be really close, and then just took pictures on very far apart for 3 hours. And I'll just use that, like, you know, rest in peace. That's fine. You're good over there. Be peaceful over there.
I like to wish you well without me. And I actually said that to somebody, and then I blocked him on all social medias. And like, I really do hope he does well. It's just he's not good for me. And so I learned how to block on TikTok yesterday.
Did you? Well, is that complicated?
The guy just showed up in my feed and I'm like, this is the guy that I can't interact with. Oh. No, you just have to go to like right corner and then you click block.
All right. I'm a boomer and I refuse
just never had to do it.
To do the TikTok.
The TikTok.
I can't do it.
You can't do the TikTok.
I've
Some
signed
people
up
say
for
it funny too.
times.
Like they're like TikTok.
TikTok. They really hit that K.
Yeah, it's like it's ASMR. Maybe, I don't know.
It might be.
Hey, so you ever like meet people who like have kids and like you don't see them in 10 years and they have like another kid and you're like, hey, that kid's not canon.
Yes. Yeah. The bonus babies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'm like, I mean, it's not even like, I'm not even saying necessarily that it's because it's like a trailer child or whatever. Trailer child.
Is that a thing?
I don't know. Maybe
like
I'm using the wrong
kid.
I'm so bad with like idioms because I'm like, is that just a minute? Let me Google if that's actually an idiom. How do humans say this? But like, yeah, when they say that it's like a kid that was like later than they should be or whatever, it's like, oh, well, they had a kid in their 40s and that's not supposed to happen. So I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about how like it could even be like 5 years and they have another kid and you're like, hey, that kid's not canon.
Yeah.
And so you like don't think of them as a legitimate part of the family. You're like, hey, that's just a character they
That
added.
kid's extra. Absolutely. They wrote him in season 8 to puff up ratings.
Yeah, it's like the alien in Flintstones, or like the other guy in the 70s show. Although, come to think of it, maybe they should have got rid of the rapist guy. I don't know. But
maybe they should have just axed him from the beginning. I'm 12 years after my brother, so I'm a bonus baby. A trailer child, if you will. Like the bonus Jonas.
Yes, trailer child.
What is trailer
I'm just
child?
like thinking you have like a mullet. You're like all Joe Dirt.
I mean, I grew up in the 80s.
I'm on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. The non-canon.
Where was I going to go with this? I had something I was going to go with this on this. Oh yeah. Well, because I mentioned Danny Masterson.
Yeah.
So I was like, this would be fun to talk about.
So fun.
So like Danny Masterson, there's the other one, Russell Brand, and just the messed up stuff that's happening there, and I still I see people who are like, well, are they really guilty? I mean, Danny Masterson he's pretty obvious he was guilty, he's convicted, but I think there's still people that are like, well, I don't trust the court system, right?
Right.
But I was just thinking about how whenever something like that happens, like if you're like a politician, if you're a pastor, if you're a celebrity, it doesn't make sense to me when people continue to do their thing, because it kind of puts So Russell Brand right now, I think he's still doing his show.
I think so.
And I'm like, it forces people into the position to decide whether they're going to pretend he's guilty and just not watch his show, or pretend he's innocent and watch his show.
Yeah.
And it's like you're forcing people to pick sides, when in reality, what I think he should be doing is stepping down, and so that he can either clear his name or get convicted, right? And giving that time, because I don't think it's fair to the fans to keep this going.
Yeah. All right. He needs to make a little room for justice to do what it does, right?
I would think so. And I mean, there's blatantly obvious stuff about him being in 30 and dating a 16-year-old. And
I didn't even know that.
Legal. That's legal.
Sure.
In England, apparently. But it's he legit had his name changed on her phone, so it looked like it was one of her friends, so her parents didn't know. So I'm like, you're a creep, dude.
You still just know it's shady.
I'm like, I'm just going to continue to not support your work. I used to actually be heavy into his stuff.
Yeah. Oh, same.
Yeah.
And then I found his comedy hilarious. And then I read his books and everything. I thought he was great. Yeah. And honestly, after reading them, allegations don't really surprise me.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that it would be false, but it's pretty much this is what he was willing to tell us. There's got to be something he wasn't, kind of thing. So I'm like, there's room for this to absolutely be true and it not be a shock at all.
Well, and I mean, part of it too is he grifted. I'm as soon as he started grifting, I'm like, okay, he's starting to say that he's on the side of COVID denial, and Big Pharma's coming after him.
That was
and I'm just flip. I can't even anymore. You're not making sense anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of when I was done. So when these allegations came out, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll just continue to not support him.
Just not. Yeah. It's really easy to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think what's really interesting too about this situation is I think it was on TikTok when someone was talking about how with these famous people, Weinstein's another one. Mm-hmm. I don't think Woody Allen's another one, because that's just one situation that's super messed up. But these continued allegation kind of situations, with these famous people, it's they get away with this stuff all the time, and it requires a certain amount of critical mass before they just can't deny that there's something wrong that needs to be investigated. And so as much as rumors and spreading rumors about a famous person is not good, it's actually also good because it creates that critical mass so that something actually gets investigated they really are that horrible person.
Yeah. The noise, the squeaky wheel, you gotta say something.
Yeah. It's tough, right? Because I mean, and I'm not one to like just like tell everybody, hey, don't listen to Russell Brand now. You
We're
know?
done with him. Yeah.
But it's just kind of like, I think like, I mean, it was the same thing with like John Christ, right? Like where it was like, you heard kind of these whisperings on Twitter or whatever about him. And then it just kind of reached a critical mass where he had to address it, step down, and then step
For
back
a
up and
little
make fun of
bit.
cancel culture.
Yeah. He
That
came
was
back
so
a little bitter, and I'm not here for it. Like he was
no.
like a nice mid-level funny for a while there, and now
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you came back with no humility. You came back,
Yeah.
I don't see you having learned anything. You know, he
Yeah.
just did not come back the way I expected. And so now he's low-level funny at best. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's bad because I think that there's just a contingency of people who believe that there's just people out to take down people's platforms.
Right.
And I mean, maybe there are. I don't know. But I'm like, I just don't see the reason to support somebody who's suspicious. I'm like, I want to support people that are doing good things in the world. And I want that holistically. Like, and so there's just people that I'm like, yeah, I'm done with that person. I wish them well without me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Yep.
Oh, so I saw this guy on TikTok that had this like idea of like having a kid and raising a kid, but they only know Spanish. But they only know Spanish with a really bad like American accent. So they like go to like they like go to a school where they learn Spanish, but it's like really bad
Americanized Spanish.
Yeah, it's like adios, mon. I don't even know Spanish.
I was gonna say,
but, you know, it's kind of like
my kids are learning Spanish in school, and when they come in and they're like Dios de los Muertos, and I'm like, not even
there
close.
We go.
Like roll some R's, do something, you know. I said something I was like, escuela. And they were like, what? Like they had no clue what was going on. But yeah, that'd be hysterical. Just learning really American Midwest Spanish.
Well,
Menu
and then like
Spanish.
legit, you know, a person who actually speaks Spanish is like, oh yeah, you know, they could say like, hey, like I speak English.
They're fluent, but no accent.
And they're like, just don't try to speak Spanish. Like we can speak English. And they're like, no.
He just sounds like he's trying. Okay. I'm fully in on this.
I thought that was brilliant. So there was like this whole NHL Pride thing.
Yeah.
Last year that was like pretty big. And it started with this guy Provorov who's like, I'm not wearing that jersey, it's gay.
Actually, yes, it is.
Well, he was like, it goes against my religion. And yeah, because God hates rainbows.
He painted the prettiest rainbow ever, and he hates them.
Yeah.
That's God's only curse on himself. He paints the best ones, but he hates them.
But yeah, there were all these players that are like, I don't want to be forced to wear a rainbow jersey because it goes against my religion and all this stuff, right? And that was another thing that kind of, you know, hit critical mass to the point where the NHL is like, okay, no more rainbow jerseys next year. And it's like, okay. And then they're like, also, not a single player is allowed to use rainbow tape. I'm like,
oh, what? They like, it's not even an option. It's
not
like
even
banned.
an option. And so, yeah. And so it's kind of this like anti, you know, LGBT or I guess we could say anti-pride capitalism.
Okay. Yeah.
Which at some level I'm like okay with because I'm just like, people are sick of it being thrown in their face.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just kind of like, well, if we stop like rainbow capitalism, maybe we can just let, you know, queer people exist.
Just let them live. Like I'm with you. I got that. Because
it was something that's like, everyone's just kind of like, a lot of people anyways are like, that's suspicious. Like, why is there a bank with a big rainbow on their logo? Why are they doing this? Like, are they making a lot of money off of this? Do they really care?
Right.
And like a lot of these companies too, it's like they support like anti-LGBTQ causes, but they have like rainbow on their logo, right? So So it's kind of, yeah. So almost like there's like this slow death of pride capitalism, but
We
it's,
Go
yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
but it is indicative of like just an overall trend that's very anti-queer. And
Those two things hold hands, of like, well, we should be inclusive and allies, but if you're doing it to make money, if you're doing it to be performative, like that's a problem.
yeah,
We were at an amusement park in like upstate New York, and it's super. You would think it was the South. It is very conservative. There are literally like Dixie flags, and it's upstate New York. Like it makes no sense. It's not even the South. But they did over Pride Month, they had a lot of rainbow stuff out. And because it was an amusement park, it said like ride love, like ride thrills. And like it looked like there should have been a P on all of them. It just didn't have the P for pride, but it was all different mixtures of couples and people and rainbows and like crazy hair. Like they went for all that I'm sure is in other regions, but for them it was just ride. And I just it just looked so unfinished, but I was like, what an
but
interesting way to be. No, we're taking part and everybody's welcome, but we're also not going to make those guys mad because we didn't do the hard P.
the hard piece.
So
It's
sneaky.
like
The hard P. Yeah.
it's like
I
the hard
just
R.
came up with that right now.
I like it.
Thank you.
Well, and I mean the other thing too, like when you talk about that trend, it's like I think there was a lot with Florida, like anti-trans bills and all that.
Yeah.
And now in Canada, we're actually seeing parental right bills.
Mm.
So where essentially it's like if your kid comes out at school, the teachers are supposed to let you know.
Okay.
Which like for me, it's like I have a kid who came out at school for a while and then came out to me.
Okay.
And it's funny because like a lot of people that are arguing against this are like, well, what if the parents are like abusive and are going to like kill their child or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's the worst part of it. But even for someone like me, where my kid just wasn't ready yet,
Yeah.
it's like it's just not good for the kids to put them in that situation. And so, I mean, there's a lot of like there's lacking of nuance with how people are talking about this.
Right. I mean,
we
I feel like if
actually
a
had,
kid
like-
says it and then goes like, please don't tell my parents, like they're not,
Yeah.
I'm not ready for them to know. If they're not signaling that they're going to be in danger, or
Yeah.
something, just to be able to be like, okay, we'll call you whatever. You can be whoever you need to be. And when you're ready, we'll help you with your parental support or something, I don't think it's
And that's the way
necessary at
it's
a parent
been.
teacher to be like,
Yeah.
and he told us he's gay. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, and I think like part of it is because a lot of the propaganda that has said that like teachers are like saying, hey, you're a girl now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Right.
tell your parents. And it's like
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's no teachers that are doing that at all. But that's kind of what a lot of this stems from, and these people that are enraged and are like protesting at schools
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
But the reality is these kids come out to their teachers and then their teachers are kind of like, well, you should let your parents know. And they're like, I'm not ready. And it's like, okay, well, we'll help you when you're ready to. Right. And so that's how the conversations should be going. And that's what I understand is how they're going. But it's like, we just live in a world where people live in different realities.
Yeah.
And I don't know how those different realities meet. Actually, we'll get into a little bit of that in a bit anyways.
Ooh.
How people change their minds.
I'm excited.
But first, one of my favorite things to do right now on X is find the worst take ever, repost it, and just say based.
I need just a smidge more context of what it means, because I think I get it, but like just based as slang, is that just I need more.
I'm trying to think, like there was like I think I like was listening to a podcast where they were talking about like like, I think the opposite of based is cap. Maybe it's like,
because I know there's cap. I've never felt older than being like, I know there's cap and no cap. I
think
felt
that's
like
where I first heard
based
it
is
anyways.
like biased, like you believe
No.
that thing because it's like based in what you already
No.
believed. No, okay.
No, based means that you're legit, and it's something I think was stolen from hip hop. I'm assuming.
Okay.
I really should have researched this before I said that I'm going to use it.
I'm
But
gonna Google this live.
yeah,
and
do it.
If this leads to dead air, just take it out.
Okay.
All right, we're going to Urban Dictionary.
Okay, so
Scary place.
my understanding as a white person is
What?
based means that like what you're saying is legit. It's based in reality, and that is the way I see conservatives saying it.
Okay.
And so.
Oh, I was super wrong.
Ironically saying based on the most whack shit that comes on the internet because I think it's funny.
It can mean like based in fact, which absolutely makes sense. It is also the opposite of cringe and the opposite of biased. A word used for when you agree with something or when you want to recognize someone for being themselves. Okay. I'm going to use it now. I'll use it right.
It is the opposite of cringe.
Opposite of cringe. That's good.
So one of the things, I read 2 books. Just 2 books.
I was going to say, did Pizza Hut throw you a party?
Oh, no. I didn't put the other one here.
Thing.
Okay, so I'll put links in the show notes. But How Minds Change is one of them. And then the other one is basically how we solve our problems. Oh, I'm annoyed that that's not in the notes already.
I usually just
But I'll put that one in. Whatever I titled it in the show notes, that's what the book is titled. Okay?
Okay. That's what the book's going to be.
Yeah.
You're prepared.
Bippity boppity show notes. I like it when I say something's in the show notes because like right now in this existence, in this reality, it's not in the show notes yet. But like as I talk, the listener goes in there and the show notes, it's already in the show notes. So I can just be like, bippity boppity show notes, it's there.
That's true.
Ooh. And no one will know.
No one knows.
That it's not in the show notes in our reality.
I'm looking at it. It's not there.
It's so cool. I'm magic. I'm magic and I'm a thought leader.
And a thought leader. Big shoes.
I'm magic and I'm a thought leader. That's the title of this episode. So, okay. So we don't change our minds. The reason why we often, as humans, don't change our minds is because we fear getting kicked out of our group.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I've been thinking this recently with just a couple of things, nothing scary, that I'm like, I really think that I believe this or would rather believe this, or this makes more sense to me, but it will absolutely affect community structure in my life that is too important to jeopardize. And or there's stuff that I'm like, oh, that, that's a belief I hold for myself. Like I'm not going to share that with everybody or something. It's social currency, man. No.
Yeah. Well, and I think like in the book, How to Fix Whatever, the one in the show notes.
The one in the show notes?
The guy was like giving an illustration of this like king who takes over for his father who built this awesome kingdom. And like when the son takes over, he's like, I don't like it when people criticize me. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to start executing the people that criticize me.
Sure.
So he's like, hey, that guy just said something mean about me. He doesn't like my pants. Go execute him. And so there's kind of like this critical point where like this soldier has to decide whether he's going to obey him or not. Because in the end, once he starts obeying, then all the other guys are like, well, if I disobey, there's killing happening now, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so from then on, that's kind of how it works. And so, yeah. So that's basically we're all soldiers murdering people.
That's where it happens.
That's my whole point.
It's all from pants.
We don't want 1984 here. Actually, we'll talk about 1984 later too.
Read a new book. Everybody apparently read that.
Maybe in the next episode, which will be happening in 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now, we'll be different
2 weeks
people.
from now. Totally. All right. So we have trusted people who vetted information for us. And we believe that if we question one piece of information, we then have to question it all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is especially true like in religion, because it's like, well, my pastor told me this.
Yeah.
And
when it's a trusted source, do you trust everything that comes from it? I mean, that's scary, and way too many people. I'm just not ready to go down that rabbit hole of no. If I question this, I gotta look at everything. It's a scary place.
Yeah. So I mean, like he talks about like the zealot, and the zealot is like the person that's just going to protect the group, protect the religion, right? And so you can't question anything in the religion because they're firmly rooted in that.
Right.
And then the second level of thinking, so it's like different rungs of thinking, really. So instead of just looking at left versus right, he's like talking about how low rung thinking is just like, hey, no, our group doesn't believe that, right?
Okay.
And then the second rung would be the lawyer. So in the case of the lawyer will have a really good argument for their side. Okay. But they're never going to look in the other side. Their job's not to look into the other side. Their job is to refute the other side.
Yep.
And so we'll be like kind of deceived into thinking the lawyer is really smart and has really thought things through because they have a really good argument. But it's like, no, the lawyer's only job is to be a defendant or be a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And so they're not going to be well weighted. So then the third rung is the scientist. And the cool thing with the scientist is that it's actually the pursuit of belonging as a scientist is always to correct inaccurate information.
Yes.
So it's like they foster like a culture where all you're doing is correcting inaccurate information.
Right.
And I think this is interesting, like when we talk about like the whole Palestine issue, right? Is you can tell who the zealots are. We can tell who the lawyers are. And we can tell who the scientists are, right? Actually, it's really hard to find scientists, though.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like people are always biased on this issue.
Right. Oof, it's a tough one. I'm glad to not be a person who has to wade into that at all.
So, yeah. So I think that's what we need to foster as a culture is like to really reward people who find inaccuracies in our information.
But they're no fun at parties. We don't actually want to be friends with them. Like, we want those people to be around, but it's hard to, I think they're so important, but so unappreciated. Like, no one wants to be around them and no one wants to be them, right? To be like, ooh, actually, and this is why that distinction's important. I think we're just all sick of being corrected, and a lot of us are wrong and need it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing too, let's see if I can find it. But like, I had seen a quote that talked about like how, here we go. So this is Carlos Happy NPO. I don't know what his actual name is. He's like a pastor.
Is it Carlos Whitaker?
I don't. Maybe.
Okay.
He looks like Stephen Furtick, but he's not Stephen Furtick.
Maybe not.
But he's quoting Sarah Maddox.
Okay.
And so Sarah Maddox said, "When you debate a person about something that affects them more than it affects you, remember that it will take much greater emotional toll on them than on you.
No,
For you, it may feel like an academic exercise. For them, it feels like revealing their pain only to have you dismiss their experience and sometimes their humanity. The fact that you might remain more calm under these circumstances is a consequence of your privilege, not increased objectivity on your part. Stay humble."
Oh.
Yeah. And that resonates with me. It's like one of the reasons why I'm not on Facebook, because I got a lot of people that are like, I'm being objective. And it's like, no, you're like cutting to the heart of where I'm at right now. And I can't handle doing the thought experiments you want to do right now, because this is actually my day-to-day life.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always thought about making sure that I'm protecting myself. And,
Yeah.
when other people have nothing to lose in a conversation,
Yeah.
do not often think, well, I've got nothing to lose. I don't care. I'm not invested. That other person might be, though.
Yeah.
Ugh, that's devastating. Okay.
Well,
Put
it's
it in the
funny.
show notes because I want to read that again.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's funny. I read these quotes and then it's like, I don't think that. Do I remember all that? I'll put it in the show notes. Bippity boppity, it's in the show notes. Bippity boppity. This is some like the least like satanic sounding magic words.
There's no.
They must have done that on purpose.
Oh yeah, they couldn't make it sound any kind of real. That's got to be it. Meanwhile, the dark side of Disney trends all the time. That's another story.
The dark side of Disney. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. We live in a crazy world. Yeah, well, oh yeah, okay. So the other thing that in that book about solving our problems or whatever, the guy talks about how like pure objectivity, like actual objectivity, doesn't mean that you represent both sides equally. You represent both sides the way they actually are. So, I mean, as far as I can tell about the whole Palestinian issue, it's like horrific things happened under Hamas.
Yeah.
And like 1,000 lives were lost, and we got like people kidnapped and all this stuff, and it's so messed up. While at the same time, the reality for the Palestinian people is that similar stuff happens to them every day under the Israel occupation. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, and I think this is something I've been contemplating, and I don't really know where to go with this thought, but it's like when you talk about like Martin Luther King, where he said riots are the voice of the unheard. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, what is terrorism? Is terrorism at some level the voice of those who haven't found justice? Like they haven't gotten justice. And so they're like, okay, like Israel is like all powerful. Like they've got military upon military. Like they could annihilate anybody. Mm-hmm. And their only sense, like they feel like their only sense of recourse is to go to war against innocents. And that's so evil. And you don't want to answer that terror with like, okay, we'll give you what you want, right? And I think that this same goes for school shooters. I think it's the same kind of thing. It's like, what is creating this scenario where someone feels like, I want to stand out. Yeah. I've been ignored for so long. I want to stand out.
Right. What pushes somebody to that corner? Yeah.
And I think those are questions we need to ask as a society. Like, how are we breeding terrorists? How are we breeding school shooters? Right? And it's like, and I think, a riot is not violent in the same way. A riot could result in personal property damage, which sucks, which I think at some level does feel like violence.
Of course.
But hopefully your riot doesn't actually result in the loss of human life. Mm-hmm. Terrorism will. School shooter will. Yeah. But it's like, I wish we could just reflect as a society instead of just getting into like a cycle of violence.
I mean, I'm severely uninformed, and I know this, and it's what pushes somebody to that, and there has to be the whatever amount of religious dogma and brainwashing or whatever you want to call it that makes it like, well, no, this action is justified because it is holy in my religious worldview, that this is what I have to do for this cause that is this important to me. And objectively and morally not, and wrong and awful. I can't put myself in a situation where I'm like, no, it was this bad and I believed it this much that I went and did anything that close. Like, I don't know. I understand that I don't understand. And it just makes me want to, I have to figure out more, but also I want to absorb much less than I already have. Like, it's so complex. It's so crazy. I don't, half the stuff I hear, I'm like, please don't tell me that. Like, I literally don't even want to know. The kids are starting to talk about it, just coming home from school and seeing the news and whatever. And, it's the what pushes people to it. And even if you were that frustrated, why isn't there some kind of guardrail of humanity that makes you go, I got to do something, but killing babies, like living infants, is not the answer. And kidnapping these women from their homes isn't the answer. And this isn't, like, that's not going to get me my goal. What limits that guardrail of compassion and humanity? What takes that away and makes this a viable option to people with these violent acts? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, these are unanswered questions. Yeah. And I think it's good for us to think about those unanswered questions, right? Like, it's like, this is where reality lies, right? Reality lies kind of in that space where it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, we just kind of sit in this tension of this pain and suffering and sadness. And thank you for listening, everyone.
Sorry. Wow. I don't have a joke to bring anything back. I'm sorry.
No dark humor here.
No, none here. Just moms.
All right. We'll be back in 2 weeks, homies.
See you then.
With the girl.
Stay based.